Hello everyone, LVD here, bringing you another quick little deck tech. The list we're looking at today is a white Weenie list for the upcoming Theros Standard. And we can see we have a whole bunch of 1-drops. We're starting with Boros Elite, just a 1-1, but it gets bigger with Battalion, and we're trying to trigger Battalion as quickly as we can. It can be triggered as early as turn 3. So moving on, we have Soldier of the Pantheon. This is probably the best 1-drop in the deck, just because it has protection from multicolored spells, and in the Return to Ravnica Theros standard format there's a bunch of multicolored spells that are pretty relevant. So it can dodge a couple removal spells and it can get through a bunch of creatures. And gain 1 life of multicolor spells isn't irrelevant. Moving on, we have Dried Militant. It's just another 2-1. The hybrid cost will always be paid with white, but keep in mind that it's still a multicolored spell, so it will trigger other Soldiers of the Pantheon your opponents might have. Then we have just 2 Judge's Familiars. They are good against more controlish type decks. They can absorb removal instead of losing a more valuable creature. Moving to the 2-drops, we have 4 Daring Skyjacks. These are 3 power creatures, so that's pretty relevant, and their battalion will be triggered often, so they can fly over some annoying blockers. Then we have Precinct Captain, probably the best 2-drop in the deck. We will always be able to cast him, and the 2/2 first strike is pretty relevant, and being able to spawn a bunch more 1/1s is also very good with the anthem effects we will be looking at later. Then we have just 1 Fencing Ace, and I put it in there to counter other aggro strategies like mono red or other white Weenie decks, just because it can kill 1 toughness creatures in combat without dying itself. Then we have 3 Banisher Priests. This is our main removal spell in the deck. Finally, we have 3 Frontline Medics. The battalion is very relevant because that means we can attack with our small creatures and not lose them in combat. And the Sacrifice ability to counter spells with X in their mana cost is probably not too relevant, but it could come up, so keep that in mind. Now let's take a look at our non-creature spells. We can see we have 3 Spear of Heliod. This is our main anthem effect in the deck, with also a relevant side ability. The reason we're not running more of them is because it's a legendary enchantment artifact, so we can only have 1 in play at the same time. Then we have a Path of Bravery. This is our 4th anthem effect, and because we're running so many low cost creatures, we're able to trigger it quite often, meaning our life total will be high enough to grant the +1/+1 to all our creatures. And last but not least is Brave the Elements. This is our main way of protecting our creatures against removal and getting them through for the last points of damage. This cannot protect us against a card like Supreme Verdict, but it can prevent the damage dealt from the new Red Sweeper Anger of the Gods, so keep that in mind. Our mana base is pretty simple, just 22 basic lands. The reason we're not playing cards like Mutavault is just because our cards are so color intensive. We always want to be able to cast our Precinct Captain on turn 2, play all our 1-drops whenever we want, and still be able to keep Brave the Elements up. Now let's jump over to the sideboard, where we have an additional Fencing Ace against decks with a lot of 1 toughness creatures. 2 Imposing Sovereigns against any sort of aggressive red deck with a lot of haste creatures. A Banisher Priest against creature decks as additional removal. 2 Fiendslayer Paladins against red or black decks with a lot of removal, and it's also another way to get more life for our Path of Bravery. 4 Boros Reckoner against any sort of aggressive deck. The reason we're not running it in the main deck is because it is a little slow, and we would rather have a card like Frontline Medic that helps our 1 and 2 drops get through for damage, but this might change if aggressive decks prove to be very popular. Then we have an additional Judge's Familiar against control decks, a random Celestial Flare against cards like Blood Baron of Vizkopa or the new red dragon that has protection from white, but this number might increase if those cards appear to be very popular. Moving on, we have an additional Path of Bravery, and then we have a Heliod, God of the Sun, which comes in against decks with a lot of removal. It is a way to create more creatures after your board has been wiped, and it could also become a creature and beat face. And then we have one Archangel of Thune, which I'm currently testing out. It is a way to go over the top and gain more life, so it combines nicely with Fiendslayer Paladin and Path of Bravery, and it's also just a sweet card. That's it for today. I want to thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see some gameplay with this deck, and as always, take care.